Hello, it's Tessa back with you for another episode of Newscast, and today we're looking at a place no one wants to ever end up: prison. For the first time in 12 years, the Isle of Man prison has been inspected by HM Chief Inspector of Prisons. Between the 27th of February and the 10th of March this year, inspectors visited the facility in Jurby to assess it in 4 areas: safety, purposeful activity, rehabilitation and release planning, and respect. Only in the latter category, respect, did the prison score reasonably good. In the other 3, the prison was deemed to be not sufficiently good. And the rest of the report, well, it certainly makes for interesting reading. 14 areas of concern have been identified, 6 of which the Department of Home Affairs has been told to treat as a priority, which require immediate attention. It also highlights the need for a full independent investigation into 3 self-inflicted deaths at the prison in recent times. HM Chief Inspector of Prisons says following consultation with the Inspectorate, the Department of Home Affairs has now contacted the Prison and Probation Ombudsman with a view to rectifying this issue. Now, the man in charge of the prison, dubbed by some as Jurby Hilton, is Leroy Bonnick, who's both the prison governor and the head of probation.
During the inspection, we'd have daily feedback, so some of the those priorities that were highlighted were not shocked to us, and certainly we'd done some work prior to them arriving, having looked at the inspection expectation document, and we'd realised some of the things that they'd been looking at that we perhaps needed to do some work on there.
Did anything come as a surprise to you?
Perhaps the one thing that did come as a surprise to me was the data collection, given that the systems that we have in place are very good at collecting data. And I know on a daily basis we talk about risk individuals, those that are at risk of self-harm and everything else. So again, it was a bit not shocked but disappointing that given the system we hadn't captured the data or the evidence that they would have convinced the inspectorate team that we were evidencing what we were doing.
One question we have to ask is, we have this report now, we have the areas that they've highlighted as concerns. We'll come on to in a minute what you are doing and what the department is doing to address some of those. Do you think there's anything in this report that the public should be concerned about?
Okay, they've highlighted, public protection and that automatically in terms around risk. But again, I think we've mentioned that there's a piece of work that's already on the way that we're doing, and we're somewhere downstream in that. And, that will put our hearts and minds at rest that, we are, always have the public's protection at the heart of what we do in terms of reintroducing, offenders back into the community.
It looks at self-harm and suicide, and we know that the latter is it's a hot topic, if you like. We know that there's been 3 suicides at the prison in recent time. People on the outside are very acutely aware of that. What can you tell me about how that's being investigated at the moment? Because there is an investigation, I understand.
And that's correct, given the department has obviously commissioned that the Prison and Probation Ombudsman come across and look at our procedures and see what lessons can be learned from there. So that's ongoing, and at the end of that, I'm sure there may be some recommendations of how we can do things a lot better in terms of what we're currently doing.
And inspectors found that the prison's approach to self-harm lacked focus or care for the individual. They said responses were often reactive and disproportionate. What did they see to make that finding?
Well, perhaps we judged individuals and probably previous history, and we felt, that we'd have to safeguard individuals. And again, I guess, given that, the deaths in custody we've had, we're conscious that we have to safeguard the individuals that are coming in our doors. So I think the reactive comment was, they're saying that we perhaps should need a more risk that we can address individual cases rather than trying to perhaps say one size fits all.
And one of the specifics that they pointed out was the special accommodation, which they've said was used more often than we would expect for those often in crisis. It's described this as poor practice and inappropriate. Why were these special cells being used if effectively they deemed that they didn't need to be?
Well, that's their interpretation of it. Obviously, those special cells would give us, observations of individuals that were in crisis. Hence the reason they were put into those positions, so we could watch the individuals and safeguard them, on a more regular basis.
I mean, I think the accusation they almost make is that it was a little bit over the top.
Well, you can be criticised for being over the top, but certainly, when we're safeguarding individuals, it is a fine balance, and people always have their view of whether that's, too punitive or it's too over the top. But, ultimately, our job is to safeguard the individuals, and it's what we try to do. Obviously, now that has been highlighted, we've looked at how we can strike a fine balance in terms of safeguarding individuals that are in crisis and are self-harming.
So they seem to say that all male prisoners that were coming into the prison had their shoelaces taken, their clothing drawstrings taken. They were observed every 30 minutes and recorded 24 hours. They deemed that unnecessarily intrusive. Why was that being done for male prisoners and they didn't find it was being done for female prisoners?
Well, I guess at the time of the inspection, they probably didn't have any female prisoners come through the induction process, and certainly those that they observed were male prisoners, given that we have a low proportion of female prisoners that are coming through our doors.
But at the time, if a female prisoner had come in, would they have been treated in the same way?
That would have, the same processes in terms of safeguarding individuals that we feel are at risk of self-harm. Those measures would have been put in place. But on that, again, that was criticised, so we have looked at that in terms and have made some adjustments in terms of how we do assess individuals that are at risk and of self-harm.
And they also highlighted issues with the use of force by staff, as you mentioned before, poor data collection and record keeping, and poor systems of accountability. They also said staff morale was surprisingly low. You're the governor. Why is the governance allegedly poor, and what are you doing to make those things better?
Well, obviously I've sat down with my management team and we've spoke to staff in terms of morale and what we can do to raise that if that's how individuals feel. I know we've gone through quite a bit of turbulence with, we've had COVID, and then we've had, the 2 deaths in custody and everything else. So, it's understandable, but, we're working every day with the staff group in terms of, as I say, poor morale.
And you mentioned before to me that staffing at the prison is actually in a good place.
Yes, it is, yes. I think as we stand as part of this interview, I think with 2 vacancies at the moment, and those have been through 1 retirement and a promotion to the next level. Most definitely consistency is key, and having the staff there at the coalface, as I call it, to do the job each and every day, that does help. It's not to say that we've never had vacancies as such, but we're in a better place in terms of quite a stronger recruiting campaign.
So let's talk finally then about actioning some of the points that this report has raised. Are you confident that the Department of Home Affairs has a plan in place now to address the issues that have been highlighted? And I understand that they are going to come back and inspect again next year, and that maybe we will see some of these boxes ticked off, if you like.
Most definitely, I'm confident that we can do that. And certainly I've talked about, we now have an audit/governance team in place that obviously will go out and make sure that we are doing exactly what we say we're doing. And then, I have quarterly reports reporting to the Department of Home Affairs that they will report to them that this is what we're doing, and these are the boxes that we're actually ticking in terms of in readiness for when they return in 2024.
The Department of Home Affairs says it's created an action plan to address the concerns highlighted in the report. It's called this a living document, designed to be updated and amended as required through the improvement process. You can read the full report from HM Chief Inspector of Prisons and the DHA's full response at manxradio.com.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.